Welcome to our Fireside Chat this evening. My name is Tiffany Lemier, and I'm your GBSA Vice President for the 2021 academic year. Thank you so much for joining us today. The purpose of our Fireside Chat is to bring local industry leaders to share their experience and expertise with you. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I'd like to remind you that we have a short Q&A session at the end. Please begin thinking about any questions you may want to ask our guests and type them in the Q&A box. Now, I'd like to introduce tonight's speaker. Tamara Fields, Office Managing Director for Accenture in Austin, is responsible for bringing innovation to clients, recruiting and retaining top talent, and strengthening Accenture's impact in the Austin community. As a business veteran with more than 2 decades of cross industry experience, multilateral project management experience, Tamara helps better serve clients with creative, strategic, and transformative solutions. In addition, she is also the Director of Operations for Accenture's US South Market unit, responsible for executing the business strategy to drive growth and efficiency and engaging and developing high performing leaders across 13 state regions. Passionate about promoting an inclusive and diverse workplace, Tamara serves as the U.S. co-lead for Accenture's Women's Employee Resource Group and the Inclusion and Diversity Lead for Accenture's Austin office. In support of the company's goal to achieve 50-50 gender balance by 2025, she advocates that Accenture's rich diversity makes teams stronger, more creative, innovative, and competitive, helping Accenture to better serve clients and communities. An Austin native and University of Texas graduate, Tamara serves on the Red McComb School of Business Advisory and is Accenture's former executive recruiting sponsor for UT. She is a board member of the Texas Conference for Women and Paulson College, a historically Black college in Dallas. Tamara serves on Austin's Chamber of Commerce Executives Committee as the vice chair in state and local advocacy, and is a recipient of the Austin Chamber of Commerce's Greater Austin Business Award for the executive leadership. She was named Texas's Executive Black Alumni Network's 2019 Legacy Alumni of the Year and is a winner of the Austin Business Journal's 2019 Profiles in Power and the Central Texas chapter of Texas Diversity's Council 2018 Diversity First Awards. She also serves as a coach and mentor in and outside of Accenture, helping people find their voices and preparing them for career advancement. Ms. Field's certifications include ITIL Foundation Certified B3, ITIL Practitioner Certified B2, Certified Solution Architect for COTS and ERP Solutions, and the Project Management Professional Certification. I would now like to turn it over to Dean Ward Paradosa, who will be moderating the Fireside Chat this evening. Dean Paradosa.
Thanks so much, Tiffany. And wow, Tamara, what an introduction.
I know, I was like, it kept going. I was like, so long.
That was great. Wonderful. We're so glad that you're with us this evening. And I know everyone's really, really excited to hear what you have to say. So I want to sort of just jump right in.
Awesome.
So first question, I actually want to sort of take a step back. And because we heard about your role with Accenture, and at least for me, I would say certainly, when I hear Accenture, I say, okay, so it's a consulting firm. But I think a lot of times people don't really know what that means. So can you talk just a little bit about Accenture, its lines of business, and what its core mission is?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and probably even after I speak, you're still going to have a question mark in your head because consulting is pretty broad, right? But, our company is a unique company in that we offer every type of consulting, from technology to business consulting to what we call operations. So that's when we're running somebody else's business for them, like a segment of their business. We do all their accounts payable, all the way down to marketing, communications, and digital advertising. So it's a really weird big bang of work because I think it confuses people at times. So when I think about it, what is consulting? Consulting is about offering services to another company around how they can solve a business problem, how they can think about the future, how they can put together a business plan. It could be consulting around technology, meaning they are ready to embark on a new technology capability, like moving from a legacy system into the cloud, infrastructure capability. It can be things like, okay, we really need to drive out costs and get into new best practices around procurement or requisitioning, and we could take over that function for them and do do that role on their behalf, you're leveraging our best practices. It can be strategy, like how do you want to reorganize, or you're going to have a merger and acquisition. How do you merge with this other company, and how do you consolidate your business process and your people and all of those type things. And so it could be security, right? So it's a really broad range of areas. Because we're such a large company, we offer end-to-end services across all of them, from technology to strategy, to business consulting, to security, to technology, to information consulting and outsourcing. And then what's the most interesting thing about us, we were one of the first to really embrace the digital movement, right? And this concept that every company is a technology company, that came out in our technology vision a couple years ago. And as a result, we do advertising and content management. We're considered one of the largest digital agencies in the world. So that, I think, is a byproduct of the fact that we've been in a technical revolution. I know many people are familiar with the industrial revolution that happened many, many, many decades ago, but we have been in a technology revolution, and it's not done yet, which is also interesting. And so I think consulting is the broad range of that, but at its root, it's about having really skilled individuals, whether they're skilled in an industry, they're skilled in a technology, they're still skilled in a function or a capability, and their ability to offer those services up to a client that's in need.
Great, wonderful. I mean, I think one of the big things I take from that as well for students who are listening is that there are a whole host of opportunities. It's also an arena in which lots of different opportunities.
Yeah. And I think it surprises people, because I think a lot of times we think technology, we think this, and we think such a limited realm of possibilities, but we need everybody. We need finance majors and business majors and engineering majors. And sometimes we need people who just think outside of the box, and we need interactive. And I mean, it's a very interesting world, because I think the skill sets are very broad. And I think for the students, you should be really excited about this time, and that you're introducing, or you're going to be coming into the workforce at this time, because I think the opportunities are so large for you and dynamic. And I think it's really about you not mentally closing off what your options are, because sometimes we think we don't fit to a certain role or capability, and you might be shocked. One of my key executives, I was just talking to her last week. She has a nursing degree. She's a nurse. She's a qualified nurse, right? But she's working in consulting in our health practice. So again, I think it's so dynamic, and the interlock and the movement between worlds has really been broken down. All of the, I think, traditional views we used to have in business and work, they've been disrupted. And so I just think there's a lot of options out there today.
Great. I think that's wonderful for students to hear. So with that, can you tell us then a little bit about your path? So we heard that you're a UT alum. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
that's
don't
good.
worry, I love St. Ed's. I'm a native Austinite, so I would tell you I grew up around St. Ed's, and even back, I mean, I might be dating myself because I really was young at this time. I just want y'all to know. But even back when the Cowboys used to do their spring training on St. Ed's campus, that was a while ago.
I heard that was a long time ago.
It was, but nonetheless, like I did graduate from UT, and I've had I did. What's interesting is I did go straight into Accenture, but that wasn't my plan. I was actually a marketing major. I had already accepted. I really wasn't thinking about consulting. My friend signed me up for an interview. I didn't actually sign myself up, but through the process, I got very interested, and then they made me an offer, and I was just like, all right, I'm going to go do this. And then I started, and in the first 6 months, I was like, I made a mistake. Why did I come here? And then because like this was a long time ago, y'all, like back when they were like, you have to code to come in, because when we first started, we really were a technology consulting company, and then we expand. When I first started with the company, we were probably like 35,000 people, and right now we're at 565,000 people. Like, it's really upsetting when they ask you, like, how long have you been at Accenture, and they give you the percentage, and I've been here like 99.6% longer than the whole company, and I'm like, that doesn't make me feel young, but we go with it. So no, I started out here, and I really just did not plan to stay. I was going to work a couple of years and go back to school, because my whole life I wanted to be a lawyer, because I like to argue and debate. And I had it all mapped out, and I was definitely going to go do that. But, it's just like anything. I got here, I actually really enjoyed the work. I really liked the fact that I switched clients, right? Like I could switch clients, I switched teams, I switched different leadership, right? Like I never had the same boss. It was very project dependent. And so I liked the variety. I liked the exposure and the knowledge that I got from different types of industries and capabilities that were out there. And so at the point that was really considerate, I did this whole business case analysis and decided that the amount of money I would be in debt when I finished school versus the amount of money I would make if I just stayed. So I stayed. And at the point that I made the decision to stay, I was like, well, I'm going to go all the way. But like anything, y'all, I've 3 times in my career, because in any job that you have, there hits periods where you're just like, I'm not feeling this anymore. And what's been good about my company is there's just a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of shifts. So I've done a lot of careers at Accenture. It's kind of a strange thing, but I worked initially in oil and gas and resources, and then I moved into high tech and communications technology, and then I moved into government. Believe it or not, I spent at least 15 years working in government. I had NASA as a client for 4 years. I've worked in Department of Defense. I've had many meetings at the Pentagon. Like, so I've done a lot of just really cool stuff. And then my mom got sick, so I kind of switched back. So I was on the road. Can you believe that? I mean, like for like 17 years, I did that whole like fly in and fly out. I've worked in DC, San Francisco. I've worked all around the world. And so I've had just a lot of varied experiences. But through that, I've been able to move each level, right, and get to the next level. And I've been very fortunate. I'm a managing director, which would be equivalent to a partner. And I've been one for like a decade, so for a pretty long time. And I've been at Accenture for 23 years. So I've been pretty fortunate in that regard. And I've been able to move through my levels. And so right now I would be equivalent. I'm the COO of our South market unit. So it's like the chief operating officer of our South. So I run about, a multi-billion-dollar business for our company. And so that's great, right? I enjoy doing that a lot, but it's just, like I said, I've quit multiple times, and I've had bosses be like, I refuse your resignation. You're just tired. You need to go like take off for a couple of months. And so, it's been interesting, but I think it's like when you commit to something and that's what you want, that you can get there. Now, I had to take a lot of detours and get a lot of advocacy and support, but I think if you do your job well, then that gets acknowledged.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your path though is really good for students to hear, because I think that there's often the sort of the impression that if you want to move up, you have to move on, like you sort of have to move out.
Yeah.
And so I think the question is, how do you, whether it's position yourself or prepare yourself, how are you ready for those internal opportunities when they come along, so that you can move up within your
Yeah,
existing?
I think whether you're inside a company or you're moving to another company, network is important. Let me just say, like, I know, like, I hate the word networking because everybody uses it, but let me just be clear. It's not about that 200 people, is that 10 of the right people. Like, just right. And so at any given time, you should have a network outside of your company. You should have a network inside of your company, because you want to have options, right? And so I need to have a network so that if this is not working for anymore, I have the opportunity to leave. And so I'm very strategic in the networks that I take. And those networks, I try to form some strong relationships. But let me say this, right? If you're staying in a company, you will not move up through your company if people don't know who you are. And I think a lot of times it was hard for me in my very early career to advocate for myself. That wasn't a natural inclination for me as a woman. It wasn't a natural inclination for me as an African American. And I can honestly tell you, like, who I am today was not who I was 15 years ago. I was much more insecure. Sometimes when I first started a project, I wouldn't even speak. I remember one of my clients saying, we were worried about you. You didn't even really talk for the first 6 months, right? Like, I was just very hesitant. I was the only female a lot of times on my projects. And so I think a lot of that framed my behavior. And I had a really keen concern for rejection. And it took me a minute to recognize that if I wanted my voice heard, I have to make my voice heard. Right. And it took me a minute to gain that confidence. And part of what I did, it was kind of interesting. I suffer from imposter syndrome. And I know a lot of people think everybody suffers and everybody does. When I was young in my career, it was a real problem for me for a number of reasons. And I internalized a lot of things. I felt like I encountered a lot of unconscious bias. And I think I took all of that and I internalized it. And so I was so determined to show people I wasn't a token. I deserve to have this role, that I'm really smart and I can do it. So I would just spend like hours outside of work studying, and I wanted to be the number one, not an expert, but the expert in the room. And the reality was, is I would spend the time, I worked like crazy. And in hindsight, I would change a lot of that because I realized now it wasn't always necessary. Part of it was I needed to make connections. I needed to meet people. I needed to help them understand who I was as a human. But at the time, I didn't know that. So I made myself the expert. And in doing that, that fueled my career. Right? Like everybody in the company will tell you, if you want it done, give it to Tamara. It doesn't matter if she doesn't know it all, she'll go learn it. Right? Like I taught myself a client's legacy system one time. Right? Like I will dive in to figure it out because it was just so important to me. Now I recognize that's first of all, it's not sustainable. It's not viable. There's a lot of other negative consequences that come for that. Let me just tell y'all. But what I learned was I learned how to learn. So it was a great benefit, and I know how to do that now. But what really helped my career is when I recognized the importance of key connections and relationships with people who can be an advocate and a sponsor on your behalf. And I'm not talking about mentoring relationships. I'm talking about advocacy and sponsorship, because I think people mix the two, but they shouldn't. Sponsors are people who in your company are in senior leadership positions who truly have the ability and authority to make decisions on who moves up to the next level. Right. And I got really fortunate in that mid-level in my career, I met an individual, a boss. He was my boss on one of my projects. He was like my project lead at the time, senior guy in the company. I don't know that I really had a concept of that. That's the other thing I would tell you, know the org charts of your company, like really know the org charts and know whose voice matters in that org chart, because there's always what I call political dynamics. But at the time I didn't know, like he was a big deal, right? All I know is that I liked him. We connected. We got along really well. He on his own became my sponsor and took ownership of my career. And he taught me the value of network. He would introduce me to people. He got me connected to the right people. He got me opportunities. When he moved somewhere, I went with him, right? And he literally moved my career through the line. And he taught me how to do that network. And when I was at that point where I really needed to make managing director, I recognized it couldn't just be my immediate boss. It had to be all the people. The people who were going to be in the room needed to know me. And I had to go tell them my story. I had to understand for them my weaknesses, which is not fun, but I had to understand them and I had to address them. And I had to figure out how to demonstrate for them the things that they thought I needed to demonstrate to say that I was ready for that next level. And I did that. And I was fortunate. But I really owe it back to that individual. And so now I think, when you start to have passions outside of work, like the chamber or, Texas Conference for Women, you're going to automatically expand your network outside of work, because that's going to introduce you to other people who are working, who have really great positions. And that's a connection that you should maintain and keep. So what I would say to all of you, whether you're in school, whether you're out of school, where you're about to go into the recruitment cycle for jobs, right? You have to make it a point to know who's at that company, who's showing up to campus, who are the recruiters for that company? Do they know you? Do they understand who you are? Or are you just a piece of paper on a resume? And I think if you can start now understanding the power of that network and that communication, you're going to have success.
I think you raise a really good point there, because the next question I want to ask is a little bit about what's changed, but I think you have also pointed in part to what's exactly the same. So for example, there are many who feel anxiety about embarking on a job search, embarking on an internship search during this time. Things are different during this time. Much has changed. And I think, another question is, well, what has changed about your work since the start of the pandemic? But I think the real question right now is, for those who are looking for jobs, for those who are about to embark on a search, how do you stand out during this very different time? And what's different about searching for a position during this time, but also what's exactly the same? And what are the things that we should not lose sight of that have not changed and that were very important before the pandemic and will continue to be important after, as we move?
Yeah, so it's a really great question. Why don't I talk about what's the same before I talk about what's different? What's the same is how your resume reads always matters. how your resume meets every word on there, how, because you're still presenting yourself, right? And if you're sitting it into a resume search, resume cut, that resume matters. So you need to still make sure that you're getting much input, as many people as you can, to make sure it tells the right story. I think in an interview, what matters, how you present yourself, even if you're virtual or non-virtual, your communication style, your ability to tell a story, your ability to hear the question that was asked. I cannot tell you how many people, and I get it, people are nervous. It is a horrible process. That part of it, I would never go back to. But the reality is you got to listen to the question that's being asked and make sure you answer it in a way that is articulate, has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that people can see your thinking through the conversation. They can understand your skills through the conversation. They can understand your presence through the conversation. They can understand your communication through that conversation, right? Every question is an opportunity for you to demonstrate your presence professionally, your professional presence, your communication capability, your critical thinking, your experiences, right? It's your opportunity to own your voice and demonstrate your voice. And only you can do that uniquely, authentically as you. And it requires practice. And to think it doesn't is wrong. You should practice. And you should have some people mamby pamby. Oh, that's great. Now you need someone who's going to say, okay, well, I didn't really like that answer. I don't really feel like that answer really answered this question. Or you might want to think about this when you phrase it this way, or you missed this opportunity in that conversation. I think it was a subtext, right? So practice. I think all of those things are the same. Practicing, communicating, all of that. What I do think is different is the virtual process is hard, and because it's harder for you to create a connection with someone. The minute you walk into a room, if that interview is in person, there's a rapport that could be established. It's harder to get to that rapport virtually. So you have to actively listen to cues, and you have to have a set of questions that you ask your interviewer. Because depending on how they may give you a chance at the beginning, usually they have a script and they're going to get to the script. But at the end, there's always okay, do you have any questions for me? You never
Don't say no.
away without some question, and not like stupid innocuous questions, like something real that shows either your knowledge of the company or your knowledge of them or your knowledge of their role. Like you're seeking to understand from them, right? Even something deep like, okay, as you're evaluating people, like, and you think about the culture of your company, what are the characteristics in your company culture that work, that help a person succeed? Like you want some real questions that are going to get you some real answers, but allow them to share and communicate with you and make a connection. So I think that's really important when you think about today virtually. The other thing I would say is you still can't allow virtual to keep you from understanding what's the organization structure, what is that company about, who's their recruiter, and there's nothing wrong with you asking for a 15-minute coffee chat with a recruiter. You should do it. And in that coffee chat, you can say, well, I just really want to learn a little bit more about this. Is there someone that you would recommend that I could talk to? Go find them and go talk to them, right? As many people that you can talk to for the company that you want to go work for, the better off you're going to be. Because right or wrong now, the more people know your name, the better off you are getting through the cycle. And also because you have more intimacy through that cycle. And so I think when you're virtual, you got to work at that a little bit more. But that is still an action that you can own and take.
Great. That's great advice. Now, you alluded a little bit to one of my next questions in the question that you should ask when you have the chance to ask questions. So you've written and spoken about the importance of equity in the workplace and an inclusive culture in the workplace. Yeah. And so the question is sort of a two-part in terms of why is this so critical for companies now, but how do you know if an organization has really embraced these principles? How can you tell as you're doing your research?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously that should be a question that you ask too at the end, is really how does your company culture embrace inclusion and diversity? You should always just be upfront about that. But hopefully they post their numbers, right? So the first thing you should always do is just check to see if they post their numbers, because numbers tell a lot. And the only other way that you're really going to know is you got to go find some people that work there at different levels and just understand, like, how much is your voice heard? How much are you embraced, right? You you can always get a sense of a culture of a place. How much is lip service, how much is real, and how much people are able to bring their authentic selves, really tell that story. But I will say, like, inclusion diversity is exceptionally important. I mean, when I first started, how much I felt like I had to try and be like everyone else. And that muted my voice, and I struggled, because it just takes a lot of energy, right, to do that. And so I just think you've got to spend the time to understand the culture, because you don't want to be somewhere that you as an individual, the authenticity of who you are, cannot thrive. Right. And there's some people where, we talk a lot about culture fit and culture add, and you want to be able to be a culture add. But some organizations aren't going to culture add who you are. And you have to be realistic about that. They're just not ready. And some cultures are ready for you to break their ceiling a little bit. And you just got to find the balance of that. And you're only going to do that by talking to people. I say today, IND is important simply for one simple fact, right? People who do the same thing expecting a different result. So Einstein's quote, right? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, is spot on, right? Because today, what has won the game in the market, what has kept companies relevant, is disruption, whether we like it or not. The companies that came in with crazy ideas and thoughts, and people never thought they would have staying power, they're here. And the companies you never thought would have left the world have left. And it's because their thinking was too stoic. And why was their thinking not innovative enough? Because everybody in their company had the same culture, the same thought, the same everything. And you needed the disruption of thought of people, to bring the ideation, to allow them to have new thoughts, new considerations, new examples. Now, so what's interesting today is some of these really crazy innovation companies are now having to settle into also the reality of responsibility and accountability and ethics around their culture. And so it's a balance of both when you're trying to get to, scalability, right? What can happen for a 100-person company is not necessarily going to, work for you when you're 5,000, or, you're no longer privately owned, but you've gone gone to the market. But I think it's really about, again, it has been proven that an inclusive culture, a diverse culture, drives profitability. And I really fundamentally believe it's because ideation, right, and innovation is introduced because two different people who come from totally different backgrounds, whatever those backgrounds are, from ethnicity to gender to sexual orientation to country different, whatever the difference is going to have a different perspective that they're going to bring to the table.
Great, thank you. So how would you describe the organizational culture at Accenture?
Yeah, we're a family-oriented organization. That's the reason why so many of us stay so long. It's kind of, people used to say we're cult-like, but I think what it is more than anything, it's like, I like the people I work with. I will tell you, it's so cliche, but the reason that I have stayed is because I like the people. I need to like the people I work with, because work is hard and I work a lot of hours. And so when work is hard, I need to be able to talk to someone and just be real, or people that I like, or people I want to go to dinner with or hang out with. Like, I was talking to another person, we were doing a whole venting session this morning. We're like, okay, we're going to go to ACL and we're going to go do the spot. I need that. Right. And so, but I think the culture is very family oriented. We work hard. I don't want to misrepresent, but I think it's a very let's support each other. Let's hear each other's voice. It's been hard as we scaled because we've grown really large. And so we got to work harder now to create those connections. And I think that's the only thing that's hard for me, right? Is keeping those connections, because we've scaled so fast and we've grown so large. But I think that's a big part of it. I do think we embrace inclusion, diversity. We were first in the technology world and the consulting world to post our IND numbers. We're very serious about it. Whenever you guys want, go out there and just go to YouTube and look up Inclusive Starts with I. It's like a video out there. And I just, every time I see this video, I cry. And I think that will tell you a lot about who we are as a culture. But we do work hard, right? We believe in, we're very, was it type A individuals? There's a lot of type A individuals in my world.
All right, wonderful. So, I want to come back to this technology issue, because I think that's another area that sort of raises some anxiety, in the sense that because technology is changing so fast, I think there are concerns about, is technology going to replace positions, and how do you continue to stay prepared, to in this working world that is now so characterized by rapidly changing technology. So what advice would you give to students about how they really prepare to enter a workforce that is, and a working world that is really going to be characterized by rapid technology change?
Yeah, I just think people don't need potential roles, positionings, types of work going to be eliminated? Absolutely. But for everyone that's eliminated, I promise you, like X amount are being added in. And so I think people miss that just because we move to automation, RPA. So, again, capabilities coming in, artificial intelligence coming in, taking over certain processes or capabilities and making them automated. The purpose of that is that you want your resources focused on more value added change. You want them being able to spend time on ideation and innovation and critical thinking and analysis. And that's especially true for companies that are product-based companies, that are customer-serving companies. In the past, they had all their people just basically processing data. That's not really value added for them, right? You really want them to have an opportunity to take the data that comes out of it and make some data-driven decisions that might actually drive and fuel growth. And so I just think it's a different set of jobs that get created. Like, you're still going to need someone to build the artificial intelligence capability or the engine. Somebody has to be the brain behind that, has to make sure that it isn't biased and is equal. Somebody has to analyze through that concept and that data and what it's telling them along the algorithms. And then there's just always going to be certain functions and jobs that are always out there. And so what I tell people is, don't be afraid of it, right? Because I think what happens is that people get afraid and they think it's not for them. And that's why I'm a huge fan of apprenticing, right? Because apprenticeships allow you to do a complete different change of your job, right, from what you're doing. And it allows you to see that what sometimes seems hard isn't hard. And there's so many different roles in any company. And so I think you just have to embrace it. But I also think you can't ignore technology, right? Like, technology is happening. Blockchain, it's not at scale yet, but it's going to be at scale. AI is not at scale yet, right? But it's going to be at scale, right? Right now, what you really see is robotic process automation. That's what you see the most. You see like the RFID technology, right? The Internet of Things like that. Like, you go to Disney and you have the little, watch on your hand and you scan. So you see a lot of that type of thing. But I think you're going to see more interaction of human and technology, and it has to become a little bit symbiotic.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's an important issue for our students to keep in mind as well, from the standpoint that, ethics and ethical decision making are a really core component of our curriculum at St. Ed's, just from our strong liberal arts and Holy Cross tradition, and really helping students understand how they can build on that strong foundation that has been an important component of their curriculum. So can you talk a little bit about the role of ethics and ethical decision making, especially as we think about this technology infused working world?
Yeah, I think it is nowhere near where it needs to be. There's quite a lot that needs to happen in this space, both from a government regulation point of view. And right now what's happening is you've seen in the last decade, your first set of lawsuits that are coming through that are basically establishing precedent and law around it, because you don't have a lot of regulation, you don't have a lot of law that's written in, policies that have been defined at either the federal or the state level. Over time, we need more legislation. I know it's a strange thing to say, right? Like, really, when would we ever need more legislation? But we actually do need more legislation around bias in artificial intelligence engines and capabilities. I think we've seen recently, there was an AI in one of the hospital. I won't name them because that would be unfair, but you can seek them out because it's been a few lawsuits. But there's one really large health provider, and they had a major lawsuit that they lost because they were using an artificial intelligence engine, and what was happening was the data that was feeding into it was deciding the care that the patients received, but because that data was ethnic based and financially based data, what happened was the individuals who are a higher socioeconomic or a certain ethnicity were getting better care and better recommendation than those that weren't. And so they lost that lawsuit. And, again, you could argue with their fault. They didn't build AI. They outsourced it to this consulting company to build it. But the point was, both were at fault in a sense, right? Because they had accountability to the data. In the same token, like you see a lot of AI right now in recruiting. It's very popular for how companies give a set of characteristics. They let them, you submit all 10,000 resumes and they shoot out the best, 5 or 50 or whatever based on that criteria. Well, the issue with that is a lot of times they're building that data based on the profile of who they hired, where if your focus is IND and all you previously hired was one demographic and gender, you're going to have a problem because the definition of the algorithm of the AI on its success is going to base it on the data that you had. And so they were trying to figure out, like, why am I not getting more of a diverse slate? Well, the criteria that you put in is wrong. It's not inclusive because it was based on your history and not new elements. And so bias is a big deal and ethics is a big deal. And determining how AI moves forward. I mean, I think you've seen Uber has had numerous, crashes. And so who's at fault? Is Uber at fault? Is the driver at fault? If you have a car and somehow something malfunctions between this automated vehicle and this other automated vehicle, and here's a bus full of children, and if the car, goes to the right, that driver will die, but the children are saved. Do you save the many for the one? Like there's a lot of factors to be considered out in these concepts. And so I think they are very important. And I don't think we have the answers yet. I think that the answers are going to evolve as the more it expands into our world and the more interactions we have with it. And honestly, the negative interactions, right? Because usually, right or wrong, it requires a lawsuit for people to see that there's a problem.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So the questions are streaming in. So I want to go in just 1 second to invite Tiffany back and for us to get started with the Q&A. But I want to ask you one more question before we move into that. And I just have to go back to the question of, I loved that you made the distinction between advocates and mentors. But I want to ask about mentors specifically right now. And have you had mentors, and what role have they played in your progression, development, advancement, and how do you identify, or how do you make that link? Because I think, it's hard.
Absolutely. Do I have mentors? Yes. Do I have them today? I do. Have I had them throughout my career? Absolutely. And have I had different mentors at different points in my career? I have. I can straight up tell you that one of the biggest mentors that I have is actually still my mother. She's actually been, I was very fortunate that she has a professional background, but she's a good person for me to test ideas on. And sometimes when people have really upset me at work, I can call her and she can talk me off the ledge and talk me off of sending the crazy email. So she's absolutely a mentor external to the company. And I have a couple of others that fall in that realm. And then I have several mentors within my job as well, because I think mentorship is important within your company because, but you have to be select. And I have different mentors for different reasons and different ways, interestingly enough. Right now, I took on a new mentor last year because I took on a new job, and that job was really stressing me out. And some of my imposter syndrome was like driving me to the next level. And so what happened is one of my good mentors, who I've known for a large number of years, I was talking to him about my issues, and he was like, Tamara, he was like, I have a mentor and his name is X, and I want to set you up with him because he's done your job. And I think he'll be a good person for you to have as a mentor from the purpose of this new role that you're in. So he actually introduced me to him, and I started that relationship with him, and I meet with him every 2 weeks and we talk about whatever I want to talk about. I can test things off my job with him. And I just met with him on Monday. And so that's an interesting way for y'all to hear, like, here's a brand new person. I was introduced to to another mentor because he felt like in my new role, he was not the best person to address me in that concern. And then I had mentors where I was just like, I'm emotionally struggling, I'm tired, I don't know what's going on, right? And I have a couple of female mentors who allow me to just talk through where I am managing my personal life, my professional life, how I'm balancing that and how I need to think about it. And then in years past, I've had mentors where, you know, they helped me introduce me to key people to help me just kind of think about my career. But have I had mentors? Absolutely. They're very important to my mental well-being, just to be frank, my emotional well-being, and my professional well-being, all three. But I do use my mentorships differently. I have my sister girl mentor, right? Who's a person who has my exact profile. We're at the same, well, I just got promoted, but we were at the same level. And we're in the same company, but we work in different parts. But she has my profile. She's a female. She's African American, and so we can share our struggle from we're in the same place in our career, and it's a really strong trust base. Can talk about anything kind of conversation. And then I have another female mentor where she's above me. Wouldn't be able to influence like my career, my movement, but she's very senior in the company. And so she can give me perspectives from being very senior and making sure that how I'm thinking about it. I told you about the individual that I had. I had another mentor who recently retired. She was instrumental in me getting even just this role because she introduced me to someone who she mentored. So I just think connections, again, are very important. And so I just thought I couldn't exist without mentor. Like I couldn't exist without it because I just think sometimes life and work is hard and I need the support.
Great, thank you. Well, now I'd like to turn it to the Q&A because we have several questions coming in. Tiffany, would you like to join us so that we can start our Q&A?
Yes, Dean, thank you. I'm having difficulty getting my camera on, but I can definitely read.
Someone might have to turn it back on for you.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
I think I just turned my camera off here. So let's.
I wonder if I can try to turn your camera on. That is odd.
And Tiffany, let's see.
So why don't I, while we try to get that sorted out, Tiffany, do you want to choose one of the questions? Can you see the questions?
I can certainly.
Okay. And I'll try to work on that.
Thank you. Ms. Fields, the first question that came in.
And just feel free to call me Tamara.
Thank you. The first question that came in is, I too have considered careers in law and business after choosing to go the business route, but I'm having doubts that I'll find success. What advice would you give to students who are dealing with doubt about success in business? And what can we do while we are still in school to help gain experience and connections?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is normal for you to have doubts. I wish I could tell you I don't have doubts today. I still have doubts. Like doubts don't go away. They become, but it's about how do you turn off that voice? How do you reduce that voice and embrace opportunity? If you don't try, it's going to be really hard for you to see what's possible and you just never know why. So my first thing to say to you is sometimes you just got to go do it. And I would say business is so broad. I mean, like that is like the broadest word. And so I think that it is a lot of options out there in terms of business. And so you should absolutely embrace it. In terms of how can you prepare, I'm a big fan of student organizations that focus on business, usually every university, and I don't know all the student organizations at St. Ed's, but I would expect that there's a business student organization. You need to start there, right? Because they're already going to have connections in the companies. They're going to have all sorts of sessions that they're doing throughout the year. And it's just going to help you get comfortable. It's going to help you get comfortable with talking to companies, hearing about them, understanding the different type of positions that are out there. Attending functions like this are exceptionally important as well, because they just broaden your knowledge, your understanding, and that's really important. And then, if depending on where you are, if you're a freshman, a sophomore, or whatever, internships. I'm a big believer in internships, and seeking them out is really going to give you the best opportunity to embrace and kind of understand what is this business world really about, and do I like it, and is that something that I want to do?
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Great. The next question we have is, we hear many stories about lack of diversity in the workplace and how companies are changing their cultures to be more inclusive. How far have we come, and what advice would you give to companies to be more inclusive in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the industry. To be, some industries are doing really well, and some industries still have a long way to go. And that's just reality, right? And so, there's a lot of reasons for that. I think the high tech world is really trying to embrace it. Your Facebooks, your Googles, and even still, they have a long way to go because the pipeline's not there. We need you as students to want to go work at these companies, and the desire to kind of majors that they're looking at. You're going to have to, we need to increase our pipeline, to be honest. But are we making progress? We are. I mean, 20 years ago, this wasn't a discussion. Even 15 years ago, it wasn't a discussion. But today, it is absolutely a discussion. It's an imperative. People are evaluating on it. They end up in the news about it. Like, I think, I think about even last year when we had all the social unrest around, what happened with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. I mean, look at what Nike did and how Nike embraced it, right? There were so many things that got posted from companies that shouldn't have, or employees posted on companies' behalf. And so there's no possible way for it not to be a conversation, because right or wrong, there used to be a very distinct line. What happens at personal is personal. What happens outside of work is outside of work. Those lines are blurred now. And so as a result, you're seeing companies take a stand. You're seeing companies take a stand on the voting rights. You're seeing companies take a stand because they don't have a choice anymore. Their employees are demanding that. And because the employees themselves feel impacted by what's happening happen socially. And so I think if I think about my own company, we do building bridges calls. We didn't do building bridges calls 15 years ago, 10 years ago, but we do them today, because we recognize that some people need a voice to what's happening. When, what happened recently in Atlanta with the Asian Pacific community, what's happened, in the Jewish community X amount of months ago, or with the shootings, like we do building because people need to have an opportunity to speak about it. All of that for me is part of the inclusion diversity. It's not just diverse slate recruiting. Absolutely. It's not just about metrics and numbers. Absolutely. It's really about having the ability to have a conversation, to own the conversation, to be real about where you are in the process of your journey of IND. And I think that you are seeing that. But I will tell you frankly, some industries are there and some industries are not. And, everybody's got to have to work that journey. But over time, everybody's going to have to get there because our world is just too diverse. If they want to have a pipeline of diverse talent, they're going to go to the place that they think best fits them. And I can just tell you that the millennial and what is it, the new next gen, they have a new name. I was just telling, my sister just told it to me, demands it. They demand it. And the reality is they have other opportunities outside of corporate America today. I mean, look how many people got rich doing YouTubing. Like there's just a whole different platform of opportunities. So if companies don't stand up, they're going to be left behind because they're not going to have best talent. And without best talent, that will impact their growth, their profitability, and their sustainability, honestly.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. The
Yeah.
next question I have is, how do you keep in touch with mentors and those that you network with?
I just make it a personal decision to be intentional, and to be intentional means you have to schedule it. It's really like I live off a schedule. That's my reality. My life is busy. It just is. If it isn't on my schedule, it doesn't exist. And so I'm intentional about scheduling it out, right? One of my old mentors, she's left the company. She's been gone a couple of years, but we still stay in contact. I still reach out. And so in a couple of weeks, we're going to go to a networking dinner with one of my current that's still with the company and her. We're going to all go. So you just have to do it. It's a choice that you make. And if it's important to you, you're going to make time for it. And from a half hour virtual coffee chat to something in person, you got to make the choice, but it's something you have to choose to do. And so I'm very intentional. I reach out, and that's something that is important to me. So it's not hard because I require it. So like I was telling you about the young man that the individual that I meet with, like we have a scheduled meeting every 2 weeks. Now, do we do the meeting every 2 weeks? Not always. Like sometimes he has to cancel, sometimes I have to cancel. When we met this Monday, I hadn't actually talked to him in a month, but we make an effort and it is on our calendar because it's important to both of us. And so when it's important to you, you will do that.
Certainly. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And the next question is, what are the top qualities that makes a top performer stand out amongst his or her peers?
They are a rock star at their job. They do the job they've been handed and they do it well. And they do it so well that there's enough capacity for them to go help their boss with something that they have that's important to them that they can take off their plate. Right. So when you do your job and do it well and they don't have to worry about you, they don't have to babysit you, they don't have to micromanage you. And then you go help them with something that's on their plate because they're overwhelmed, they're gonna love you.
And I think we have some time for a few more questions. Do you have any additional advice on how to get over the imposter syndrome that students experience? And
Yeah.
although it fueled your desire to be to be the most experienced, what were the negative consequences that you briefly mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, imposter syndrome is a hard thing. And I will tell you, I thought I had really beaten that thing down. And I was like, I thought I had finally hit my stride at work. I was doing a role that I understood, felt like I could do in my sleep. I was like, I'm the one. I run our Austin office. Like, life is great. And then, our organization did a major organizational change last year, like the biggest we've done since we went public. Like, and then my world was rocked again. And so then I had a whole new role and I was not the expert and I did not know it. And then COVID hit and I was like, okay, this is like the perfect storm of crap. Sorry, it's just horrible. And I started feeling so insecure and questioning every decision. And I feel like people were questioning me, did I deserve the role or should I have been in the role? And I had a lot of people asking me about my background and, oh, I'm surprised that you got it. Like, I would have thought this person would have got it with this kind of profile, which is just shade and just a lot of just really interesting comments, right? And so that didn't help, right? So then I started, that just kind of fed the little imposter monster. Um, and I was really struggling to be honest. And so the first thing that helped me was one of my mentors because I finally I was fed up and I called and I was just like, I am just not happy. And I just think that I shouldn't be doing this role anymore. And I'm just thinking about leaving the role or quitting altogether. And they're like, what? So they were like, just, calm down, Tamara, step back, like just walk me. So I just started dumping. I had a whole venting dumping. And they were like, okay, first of all, you wouldn't be in the role if they didn't think you could do it. And like they just started to back me out and they could back me out. And then they were like, okay, yeah, you may not have made the right decision. It's not gonna be a problem in the future. Right. They took all of what seems so big and they made it smaller for me. They made it palatable for me. So this is where mentors can play. And then the second was they were like, you need to make a plan on what you don't know and what you need to learn and go learn it. And so I put a plan in place to go figure out what I needed and I didn't kill I did a 6 month plan. It took like 6 months, right? I put a plan. So that started when I put a meeting together with the other DOOs and I'm the only female among these DOOs at the time. And that's intimidating. They've been doing this role for years and I'm the first one doing the role. So it was intimidating, but I did it because this wasn't about my pride. That meant I had to and I needed to learn. They were the experts. I needed to get over my pride and learn from them. And I did, right? And so I just started doing all that. And then the fourth thing I started to do was every time a negative thought came in, I tried to counter my head with a positive thought. And I started to write down, like, this is who you are, Tamara. This is what has, you've always been credited in the past. And I would look at it. So when that negative thinking would come, I would look at it. And then when I could really feel myself in a down place, I would call my mom, like, even if I had to get off a call. At that time, I started doing walks in the week. Like my schedule is crazy. I work a lot, but like I would block 45 minutes during the week, at least twice a week, just to take a break in the middle of the day and go for a walk with my mother who lives around the corner. And even that was really helpful because then I could unload. Like if I was having a hard day or a bad day, until I could get back to what I call equilibrium. And at some point in there, I hit it. And I know it's good. You know what I mean? But I think it's something that you actively manage. But to the other question of what were the negative consequences of making myself be the expert in the room, I just work too much. And it's a problem to not have work-life boundaries. So like at the time, my boyfriend, we were arguing all the time. We broke up. Several of my friends, I lost some key relationships because I disappeared. I was not around. I was not available when they were going through some real stuff. I think I was mentally exhausted and tired and that made me cranky, but I didn't really realize how really cranky I was. Even my family was not happy. Like nobody was happy with me. And then at the end of it, like I was just exhausted. Like I had this one project where I literally worked 90 to 120 hours every single week. Because I was like doing this worldwide major implementation. They were having layoffs, but they didn't replace the people on their side. So I was doing my client's job and my job. That's where I taught myself the legacy system system. Like I would do Europe calls at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. I would do US from 8 to 5. I'd go to dinner, and then I would start with Asia and China at 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. Then I start to do my work, and then I would go to bed at 1 a.m. and be back up at 5. Like I did that, like it was insane. And it was just bad. I came off that project, and I remember HR, it's bad when HR reaches out and they're like, we're really concerned about you for the number of hours that you logged. And they were like, we just want to give you 2 weeks. You don't even have to take it out your PTO. We're just going to give it to you. Like, and I swear I woke up and I had like a whole crown of gray. Like, I promise you, die is my friend. And I think, I learned that, what did that do for me? Right. Like I didn't need to do that. I didn't need to do that to get promoted. I would have been promoted anyway. Right? I mean, like, it just wasn't necessary. And so I remember I came off of that session. I was just so exhausted and so tired. And I really did take time to figure out, like, is this really how you want to live your life? Because that's not enjoying your life. Like, that's not enjoying it. Right. And I made some choices, and I came off that with some choices. Like, I'm not going to work weekends unless the world is ending. Right? You know what I mean? At the time I was still traveling, doing the Monday, Friday. So I switched it to Monday, Thursdays. And then I went to Monday nights, Thursday night. Like I just switched, and I was like, I will work for you for these days, but like Friday to Sunday, I'm out. You know what I mean? I started taking vacation, like real vacation. Like, people be like, Tim, are you really going to take this? Like, I'm really going to take this 2 weeks and I'm off the grid. Bye. I started taking out of country vacations. This started my travel. Like, I do crazy travel, y'all. Like, I've been to all 7 continents. I'm at 90 plus countries. Like, I realized when you're out of country, they feel too guilty to contact you, right? Like, COVID has messed up my grid. Like, I would add 2 to 3 countries every year, and COVID is like in my flow. Like, I'm so unhappy in this COVID reality. But in fact, even today on my break, I was like researching, where can Americans go? And I was like, Greece. I can go to Greece. I can go back to Greece. I can go to Iceland. I've been there already, so they're not new countries. But I saw on there, like, Albania was on there. I was like, maybe I can go to Albania. I don't know, but I was really trying to figure it out. I was like, y'all are not going to hold me hostage another year. Um, Luckily, last year I got to Nepal before like everything shut down. But so I started traveling. Like, I'm serious about my vacation. People will tell you, like, I'm telling you, come September, Tamara's gonna be out for a month. And I did. Like in 2007, I took 2 months off and backpacked through Australia and New Zealand. I mean, I've had some fab trips. So I think I learned from it, and then I changed my reality around it, and I realized that I still got promoted, and my bonuses were still all good, and it was fine. And enjoy my life, because I just think if it's all work and no life, like, why is that? Like, that? No. I work to serve my life, and that was the philosophy I needed to embrace.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that was all the time we have for our Q&A. And now I'd like to ask Tamara and Dr. Ward Paradosa if you have any closing remarks.
Wow, I would really just like to say thank you to Tamara. You shared such wisdom with our students about how to really not just really good practical advice for how they navigate the working world, but also wonderful advice about how you find life balance and how you really live your life to its fullest. And I just want to thank you for all that you've shared. It's been really inspirational.
Thank you so much. If there's one final thing I would tell all of you students is, don't stress. You are so young in your journey. And the one thing I've learned more than anything, it may not seem like it, but there are many paths. There are so many paths to success or your desires. And even if you have a hiccup or a failure, there's going to be something. I've had many failures in my career, trust. All right. You just pick yourself up, and you keep moving again, and you take a new path. Like, there's so many paths. And so I think it's really about finding the right place to balance your life and enjoy it, because life is short. And if that's anything, COVID this year has just really reinstated that. And I don't know about y'all, like, I'm really upset. It's been a hard week. It's I have a lot of coworkers in India. And to see how they're being impacted right now has been really upsetting. The stories, the people, that it's been and so it's just such a reminder that we have to keep what's most important in front of us.
Yeah. And I would add to that, I think that's so true. And just also recognizing how fortunate we are in this country as well, because just access to opportunities to have life return to something that looks like what we remember it to be, and to have access to vaccines or opportunities to return to normal. There are many countries that are nowhere near where we are.
It's true. I mean, I deal with that every day, right? As a DOO, right? Like because I'm trying to enable our people, and I have to enable, my teams are global, so I'm trying to enable our people worldwide, and it's hard, right? Trying to figure out the access, and do you let them go back into the office when it's not as safe for them? Like, there's just so many decisions and considerations today, and it's just, we live in a different time.
Yeah, yeah. Tamara, thank you so much. This has been great. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who joined in.
Thanks everyone for joining us this evening. Take care. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.